So they're calling on Beetlejuice,
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
who's no ordinary ghost.
You don't want his help.
Can you be scary?
What do you think of this?
Now, the party's over.
You want somebody out of the house. I want to get somebody out of your house.
But the fun has just begun.
It's showtime.
Who's Beetlejuice?
Don't ever say that name.
Beetlejuice.
No, Astrid! I am serious.
If you say his name 3 times, he will appear. Beetlejuice.
The juice is loose.
I'm gonna make you so happy.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin,
I'm Jake.
and this is Movie Matters. We continue Legacy Month with Beetlejuice from 1988 and Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which I just said his name 3 times, which is bad, from 2024. Getting into it, I love the original from 88. Keaton's awesome as usual in pretty much every role he's in, and he owns the shit out of this role. The Legacy sequel that they just came out with, first time watching it, I enjoyed it. I thought it wasn't bad. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on this set of movies, unlike Ghostbusters.
Right on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the original is awesome. It's hilarious. And the sequel is well done and enjoyable. Yeah, I mean it's best case scenario besides being a better movie than the original. So I was happy watching it.
Yeah, I think the original's way better. I think this Legacy sequel is good. I think there are some faults with it, but we'll get into that once we get on to that one. But for now,
I will say there were aspects of the new one that I actually did like better, but there were some shortcomings. So
yeah. All right, well, I definitely want to get into that, but let's focus on the first one first. So, first one was made with a $15 million budget, and it grossed over $75 million worldwide. So, made quite a bit of money in the 80s. It was the 10th highest grossing film of 88. It was also the first film to be sent out on DVD by Netflix in 1998. So 10 years later, it's the first kind of Netflix film, which is hilarious. Very interesting.
Funny.
I never knew that. I have a lot of cool trivia on the first one. The second one, not as much. So along with Spaceballs, Big, and Caddyshack 2, this is among those titles that uses the F word in a PG-rated movie. Pretty interesting, especially when the PG-13 dawn of PG-13 was coming right there, basically. Like, it was already out. So, it's crazy that this movie's PG.
yeah, it's definitely at least PG-13, or should be.
Yeah.
There's lots of like borderline sex jokes and F-bomb. I think there's a few like shits and stuff like that. So yeah, kind of surprising that it's only PG.
Yeah.
But it's also surprising that Airplane is PG. So
Yeah, for sure. I love how this movie opens and the second one opens, and we'll get to that, the same way, basically, and just starts off with Danny Elfman's incredible score. His soundtrack and score to this movie is so awesome. I mean, he always makes a pretty zany, fun, wacky, and wild soundtrack and score. Obviously, Tim Burton directed this, and Danny Elfman works with Tim Burton all the time. I wonder if there's been a movie that he has not worked with him on, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, I mean the score for Beetlejuice is probably like one of his most iconic. Probably up there competing for first place with Batman, which was 89.
Yeah.
Just like both of them are just so recognizable. Like instantly recognizable.
Yeah. I just Googled it real fast. Danny Elfman has not worked on 3 of Tim Burton's movies, and that's Ed Wood from 94, Sweeney Todd from 2007, and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children in 2016. Only 3 movies.
And Sweeney Todd doesn't really count because it's already like a adapted musical.
Yeah, true. Yeah, the whole opening is awesome in general too, with the establishing of the couple, Adam and Barbara, played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis. I think they just right out of the bat, you're like, oh, this is a fun couple, this is a loving couple, like they are great, and then they die instantly, which call me crazy, and like I haven't seen Beetlejuice in a long time. I totally forgot that they die in the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, and which is funny because that's the whole premise of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's like within the first 8 minutes, maybe. Like,
yeah. No,
like
actually,
that.
I have the statistic on that.
So yeah, I mean, it's easy to forget even while you're watching the movie. Like,
Yeah, they die 5 minutes and 35 seconds into the movie.
yeah.
So yeah, I totally forgot about that. But I mean, like the whole thing is them trying to haunt, and they also don't look dead. So
Right. Yeah. They're the most alive looking ghosts in the movie.
yeah, exactly. So apparently, originally, their deaths were extremely graphic, and so when they crashed on the bridge, Barbara's arm ended up getting crushed when the car door on her side slammed into her arm. Then when their car plunged into the lake, they were screaming for help as they were gradually drowning. When their spirits return to the house, Barbara resets her broken arm, though the way the Maitland's deaths were presented were mostly toned down to be less gruesome and grim for the film. The dialogue where Adam asks Barbara, "How's your arm?" and her response is, "I don't know, it feels frozen," which I remember being like, that's an interesting line in the beginning. Obviously, it makes sense because it's taken from the original script with their gruesome death. But yeah, it's kind of a confusing line where she's like, "Yeah, it feels frozen," but it also could be like the water was cold. But
Yeah. Oh.
and it's funny that in a lot of the people in this death underworld they're like, whatever happens in their death is how they are in the underworld, in like
Yeah,
the
it's
death
like a
world.
permanent state.
Yeah,
of,
which
like,
is
however you died. Yeah.
really fucking cool, and I can't wait to get into that. But Tim Burton, like obviously they were soaking wet from drowning, but Tim Burton's like, I don't want to have them soaking wet the entire movie, which
Yeah.
makes sense. Like that'd be super annoying, and
Yeah.
for the actors. And I almost lost my laptop there.
But yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to keep them more like cohesive and whole, because like they're the main characters of the movie
Yeah.
basically, and you want them to be likable and relatable. And if they're all like mangled, it's not as easy.
Yeah, definitely. And I like when they do mangle themselves to scare. That's like the best gags of the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I like, again, I love how they're established in the beginning as a loving couple. I like them as actors. I like how they perform in this movie. Alec Baldwin really kind of disliked his performance in this movie. He was just unhappy with how his character is, because he's just like, he plays the straight man, and everyone else is like absurd and ludicrous in this movie. And so every time he had an idea that he'd bring up to Tim Burton, where he's like, "Oh, like I think my character should do this," and Tim Burton's like, "No, you're the straight man. Just relax," which is pretty funny. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, and then you get the new owners coming in, the Dietzes, which great cast. You've got Lydia as Winona Ryder as Lydia, Catherine O'Hara as Delia, and you've got Charles, which I'm blanking on his name, which we'll talk more about him in the sequel.
Yeah.
Because there's some facts about him that I don't know if you're aware of. Did you Google anything about him?
No, I did not.
All right, we'll drop that bombshell here in a little bit. Yeah, Jeffrey Jones is his name.
Yeah, everybody's
he's
like so good.
Yeah, he's the principal from Ferris
Bueller. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I love how they're trying to haunt them and scare them as ghosts. Like, it's such a great premise, and you get that great. There's again those gags that I was mentioning earlier, literally pun intended. With you have Gina Davis, Barb hanging from a noose in the closet, and then she pulls her face off, which is such an awesome. Like, the effects in this movie are so awesome. It's all done pretty much practically. As much as they could do practical, they did it. And they did like stop motion, and they also try and do that in the sequel, which again we'll get into, but I love that. I think it's so awesome. This movie won the best Oscar for best makeup.
Yeah, I mean the especially when Baldwin and Gina Davis like mess with their heads and like do like the stretching and like whatever like weird stuff. It's like really cool. And like I mean it's kind of like that Tim Burton style, you know, like he's kind of got that whatever like certain flair, you know, to everything. That's again like this like fine line between like grotesque and also like childlike. And like, yeah, this movie is just like exactly on that line.
That's a great point. I love that. Yeah, it's like it's creepy and scary, but it's like it's not at the same time. And he walks that line super well. That's a great point. That makes me like the movie even more. Yeah, I mean, I like when she's holding his head, and because she cut it off, and then his headless corpse runs up the stairs to close the door.
Yeah,
like that scene's awesome. Yeah, it's great. Then you get them. The world building in this is really cool. There's a lot to it, but it's kind of very simple at the same time, and it's just such a wild plot, especially for the '80s. In my opinion, it's just crazy. Like the whole sand, you can't leave where you die because. You know, it's just that's kind of where you're confined, or like you can't leave your house, and if they do, they get attacked by like sandworms, which is very Dune-like. But the stop motion with that is super cool. The visual effects budget was only $1 million, so they did what they could.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's what like makes it awesome, even more so.
And I do think the one thing that's worth noting is like with the world building, how there's not a whole lot of like explanation. Everything is kind of visually presented to you.
That's very Tim Burton like too.
Yeah, which is extremely approachable for the viewer. And like nobody wants to listen to somebody explain all the rules of dying, you know, like in like a 15-minute monologue or something, you know. So like, yeah, it's really well crafted and like presented, extremely well. Yeah,
and visually, again, with that $1 million budget, visually he wanted the movie to look as tacky and B-movie as possible on purpose. So that's super cool, and it does, and it just adds to the fun nature of the premise.
Yeah. Well, and like the characters, particularly the Dietzes, are so like B-movie kind of characters, you know? And like especially Delia's art is very like subpar. So yeah, it all like really melds well into this like that like creepy but also like zany aesthetic, that Burton's so good at nailing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like even them having Othello as like their assistant, basically the guy who's redoing the house. He's just over the top and hilarious, and kind of the antagonist of the movie almost, because he's against everything, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know if like Michael Keaton is the antagonist in this movie, but he's also not. It's interesting.
Yeah, he's like I don't know. He's almost like an anti-hero.
Yeah,
because he's supposed to be helping Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis
Barb and Adam.
the Dietzes out, which you're not supposed to like the Dietzes, but you're supposed to like Lydia.
Yeah.
And then at some point you kind of do a 180 and you're like, maybe like the Dietzes aren't so bad, and Beetlejuice is kind of the problem, and then Othello's also a problem. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting way to kind of like pull the audience through that plot. It's kind of like ever shifting on like what you want as the viewer, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's very engaging.
Yeah,
I like that. So Michael Keaton's character Beetlejuice, of course, he came up with the character's look, a lot of the look himself, which is really cool. He told the makeup department he wanted mold on his face and his hair looking like he stuck his finger in an electric socket, which is spot on.
Yeah.
His hair. And he requested that the wardrobe department send him clothes from all different time periods. That way it looked like he lived through every single time period, but no time period in particular. And he apparently, when he first showed up to set as Beetlejuice in character, the crew was chanting "juice, juice, juice," and that got Keaton like super stoked for the role, which is awesome. I could only imagine being on set and just doing that. I mean, super cool, super cool.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just awesome, and he also ad-libbed a ton of his lines, which is perfect for the role, in my opinion. The shit he says is just hilarious.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of classic lines. Like when I like when he like eats the fly. He's like, "Hey, come here!" Like, and he's got that like rough voice, and he's like, "How about the little nosh?" And he's talking like he's like a New York Jewish guy, which is hilarious. And they did that fly scene as a nod to Gina Davis in The Fly. You can hear the fly go, "Help me, help me."
Yeah.
And that's from the original Fly, which we did the episode on The Fly, which is a great movie with Gina Davis. It's also depressing as shit. Go check out that episode if you haven't already.
Gruesome.
Yes, also very gruesome. So if you want a horror movie like this that has awesome effects, and you want to be depressed after you watch it, go ahead and check that one out, because that's a fun episode and a fun movie. But yeah, back to this movie. Originally, Tim Burton wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger for Beetlejuice. Isn't that wild?
Sounds so bad.
Yeah. He considered. I know, like, when I read through the trivia, it's like at one point he considered. It's like, I don't know what considers means in this scenario. Like, did they go as far as contacting him? Did they, we don't know that. But
did the studio just say, "Hey, we want a A-list, star? How about Arnold?" And Tim Burton was like, "Hell no."
Well, Tim Burton was the one that considered him. The studio was the one that was like,
"Oh, really? Huh, that's interesting."
And just it was the company felt that Schwarzenegger was just too big of an action star and wouldn't be taken serious in such a goofy ass role. I'm reading, and then he actually approached Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger turned it down to do Running Man, which is funny. Which we've also done that movie. Check that episode out.
Also a good movie.
Yes, also a good movie, which Legacy reboot. It's probably coming out end of this year, maybe.
Yeah.
Or 2025. So, I love the like death waiting room in this movie and the other one. Like that is so fun and hilarious. Like all the people you see and how they died is just hysterical. You got the big guy that died like eating food on like a recliner chair. You've got the snorkeler who got bit by the shark. You've got the guy in the sleeping bag with the rattlesnake. There's the shrunken head guy is great. That's classic, and I'm glad they like brought multiple of them into the new one. The charred guy.
Take a number system, and it's like a huge piece of tape because it's like 3 trillion something.
You got the charred guy offering a cigarette, which is hilarious. The runover guy, the guy who's like hanging from the like hook that's like
flat,
run over. And like I forget the joke he does, but he just says some like stupid punny joke, and it's actually pretty funny.
But like that's some of the like cartoony aspects are like some of the best kind of gags in the movie. Like that guy is like straight out of like a Looney Tunes, cartoon or something. Like it's a pretty funny gag, and like, some of the other ones, like the guy who's like eaten by a shark and like has the shark like hanging onto him, stuff are like also pretty like cartoonish, and it adds to that flair and style of the movie in like a really great way.
Yeah, like the magician's assistant that's been sawed in half.
Yeah.
Just really fun effects. I like the caseworker that's assigned to Barb and Adam's case, where she's got like her like neck was, her like throat was slit, and the smoke comes out of it, which is an awesome effect. The effects and just like the makeup. I mean, it makes sense. It won an Oscar. It's crazy. And then so Beetlejuice doesn't appear until 25 minutes into the movie, and this is a pretty short movie. I mean, it's an hour and a half, it's an hour 35 minutes, I think. Let's see, hour 32. So it's a quick watch. It's a very quick watch. Michael Keaton only spent 2 weeks on the entire film. He's only in 20% of the film, and you actually kind of like you realize that he's the title character. You kind of like watching it this time. I was like, man, Beetlejuice is like barely in this fucking movie.
Yeah.
Did you feel that too?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like really about him. It's more about Lydia and her like establishing the relationship with Barbara and Adam,
Yeah.
But I think that's like, it's a super catchy name. And two, it's like
Beetlejuice.
He's kind of the like mythology, of the movie. So like, you know, even though we don't see him that often, he's constantly brought up and like alluded to, and stuff like that. So like, he's like, he like literally is kind of the boogeyman, in the movie.
Yeah, great point. The relationship between Barb, Adam, and Lydia is great because in the beginning of the movie, they're like trying to have children, and it seems like they can't. And then, then they basically adopt her as a surrogate daughter at the end, and they're part of the family. Like she's part of their family, which is really nice, and is a really good. It's a sweet plot point, if you ask me. Again, rewatching it and having not seen it in a long time, I was like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. Like you pick up on themes as you get older, and more like messages that the movie is trying to convey, or like themes of the movie. So I like that. And again, that's like we've talked about it in pretty much every review. It's like going watching a movie and putting it under a microscope and dissecting it a little bit more and talking about it more, really, it opens your mind up a little bit to different aspects of the movie and the good and the bad, which I like.
Yeah, and like the like core kind of theme of the movie is family, which is also a core theme of the sequel. So that was nice to see, like, carried through
That thread line,
and
yeah.
like makes it very engaging. Like when movies have like those kind of universal,
Familial
themes to them.
themes, yeah.
Yeah, it's everybody can easily access them, and
Yeah.
it's enjoyable. It's not like a study in like trying to make the audience uncomfortable and like crap like that. So
Yeah. I think Beetlejuice's grave, like the set design is so simple yet incredible. Like his grave is super cool. Like the green grass that's like a rubber floor mat, and then like
Yeah.
the cork that they have to dig into.
all the scenes in the model are so cool. Like how
Very
they
cool.
like did like macro versions of like all these like fake materials and stuff was just super neat.
Yeah, really cool. Really well designed. And what's funny is there's that scene where Michael Keaton gets mad and kicks that tree over. And originally the tree was not supposed to fall, but during that take he ad-libbed the line "nice fucking model" because it wasn't supposed to fall, and so
You gotta keep that.
yeah, and then he squeezes his crotch twice and honks, which is hilarious. And so he basically said that he was directing that when he did all that at the set designer, which is hilarious. So he's in character saying that. And Tim Burton loved that so much that he left it in the movie, which is awesome. I love hearing stuff like that.
So funny.
Yeah, nice fucking model. The only F-bomb of the movie.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
slips in there though. Like if you're not really paying attention, you'll miss it.
Yeah,
But
I agree,
yeah,
but I
mean,
love that scene.
It's I mean, and like it's so fitting of his character, like
And knowing that backstory up to it makes it even funnier.
yeah, for sure.
Then there's some iconic scenes in this movie. So the dinner scene with Deo, where
Yeah.
they finally, Barb and Adam, figure out how to kind of scare them and control their bodies. The Dietz's family and Othello, and I think that whole sequence is hilarious and incredible. Tim Burton kind of feared that scene wouldn't be received well, because it wasn't funny, but audiences loved it, and it's definitely one of the film's most iconic scenes, which is crazy. And again, it kind of is like the little things you think may suck actually could turn out to be pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the funniest scenes with everybody
Yeah.
lip syncing and like getting like grabbed by like the shrimp hands and like thrown back
Yeah.
in their chairs and stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, it's such a good scene
Yeah, and then you
and such
get,
a good song choice because it's like
Oh,
so
yeah.
random.
yeah. I mean, it definitely. I feel like I probably have to look up the popularity of that song before, but I know it got it more popular for sure.
Yeah,
Then you get the scene with Beetlejuice coming out then with him as the snake and his head. That is borderline nightmare fuel.
yeah, it's pretty
Like that
creepy.
that scene is creepy AF, and I remember as a kid watching that and being kind of like, "Oh, that's terrifying."
Yeah,
But yeah, that's I mean, that's super well done. At first, that scene was filmed with just a snake head in general, and then they they changed it to put his face on it, from what I read.
Yeah, I mean, that just makes it so much creepier.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the like all the faces he puts on to like scare, and the iconic where it the shot behind him where he's like shoots
A bunch
stuff
of like
out of his
legs
face.
and like bat wings come out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I mean, they do it in the sequel, which is I love that. Like that shot is so awesome. It's it's like, no, we're not going to show the front, just the back, and it's up to your imagination to figure out what it's going to be, and that's like genius filmmaking.
Yeah.
Genius filmmaking. Then I like the ending. They get rid of Beetlejuice. The original ending was much darker, and it would have ended with Lydia dying in a fire and joining her friends as a ghost, which is fucked up.
Yeah.
And they basically changed it because they're like, Lydia is like the heart of the film, and she's where like young people can relate to and watch on screen and enjoy. And they're like, yeah, we can't kill her off.
Yeah. Well, and like a big part of the movie too is her kind of realizing that like life is worth living.
Yeah.
So yeah, offing
she's
her in
depressed
the
and,
end
like,
isn't like
it doesn't tie up her
conducive
arc.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like super suicidal, which is scary. But the box office success of this movie created plans for a sequel. Like they originally called it Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. Script was commissioned, and Michael Keaton and Winona Ryder signed on for it. But they lost interest in the project, and that's when Burton went to direct Batman, because Batman came out right after this. And then obviously we've got the new sequel. So, what? Any
Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian sounds terrible. It was probably
terrible.
a horrible idea.
Terrible. So, anything else you want to add on Beetlejuice?
No, I mean, it's a good watch.
Yeah.
Like anytime, like it's a classic.
Yeah. I like the ending. It's a good movie. It's fun. It's approachable. There is some nightmare fuel, so depending on how old your kids are, beware.
Yeah. Overall,
yeah.
it's not too scary, which is good, but you know. Yeah.
So moving on to the sequel. So yeah, I liked it. There are some parts that I didn't like, that I think could have been better, and it was just sloppy, if you ask me, certain things. But this movie made a ton of money. I don't know why I didn't see it in theaters. I just was like...
Yeah, I think this came out last summer,
yes.
if I'm remembering correctly. And we were both just like in a real rut about new movies,
Yes,
so I think
that's
both of us
exactly
had
why.
like no interest in going to see it. So.
That's exactly why. So, just all the movies that came out, I was like, these movies suck. I don't want Beetlejuice to be tarnished with this movie. Came out in September.
Oh, okay. Still, though, we were not particularly pleased with the movie landscape.
Yeah, because... Mad Max Fury Road. There was the two movies that like threw me off of movies last year. It was...
the Furiosa and...
the Furiosa and then the Stuntman movie with Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
Which I thought were both trash. I thought they were terrible. But this movie was surprisingly solid. But I'm also glad I didn't see it in theaters, as much as I am a proponent for seeing movies in theaters. I liked this because I always watch trailers for movies, and like, again, I kind of had a bad taste in my mouth for movies, and the trailer looked okay. Like, I didn't think it'd be that good. And I usually, when I go into movies, I remember the trailers, and like, seeing this movie, watching this movie this week, I didn't remember a ton from the trailers, and that made it a lot more enjoyable for me.
Yeah. And I mean, as always, we watched both trailers before we started recording, and I'll say neither trailer actually captures the tone of these movies. Like the trailer for the original is very like 80s
like a sizzle
goofy
reel.
narrator,
Yeah.
like these goofy ghosts are trying to get people out of their house, like whatever. It's like really dumb. And then the reboot or legacy sequel trailer is like super intense and like cinematic and like over the top, and it's like that's not the tone of the movie.
No.
And I mean, to roll into the legacy sequel, they nailed the tone and matched it pretty well to the original, which I was very happy about. Like we talked about that with Ghostbusters, where they nailed the tone in Ghostbusters Afterlife. So I was glad to see that in this one also. Yeah,
agreed. So yeah, like I was saying, the movie made a ton of money, but it had a humongous budget. It had a $150 million budget, probably because these stars are super well known now and they're getting paid a lot more. Also inflation, but $150 million budget for this fucking movie is insane.
Yeah,
that's so much money. I mean, they probably paid Keaton $50 million or like probably like $25-30 million to be in it.
Yeah.
But it made over $450 million at the box office. So it made a lot of money. Like, it was one of the highest grossing movies of last year.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell this is a much higher budget movie too, from the effects and stuff. And I mean, there isn't like a whole bunch of CGI in there. I mean, there's some, but they do stay pretty close to practical effects, which was again good to see. But like, I mean, the set design is like fantastic in the sequel, and like obviously a lot of money went into the sets and stuff. But like, I don't think that it didn't detract in any way from like the charm of it. I think they maintained that well, carried that through well, from the original.
Agreed. And it even, like I said earlier, it opens the same exact way with Danny Elfman's zany score and it going through the like town. So the Maitland Dietz's house was a facade that had to be rebuilt for this movie, but the rest of the small town remained like largely unchanged. Like no skyscrapers were built or like any new buildings or anything like that. Which Burton said it was like kind of haunting to go back and see that it was like the same way from 89 to 2024. I mean, that's a lot of time. But it just like kept the spirit of the original film, and that makes sense.
I mean, it's got that like, I mean, because I think they're supposed to be like New York City like people, and this is their like country home, so it's definitely got that like small New England town, kind of vibe, and like I mean, it is super cool. Like it has that like small charming town vibe, and it is cool that nothing really changed, because it helps, I think, sell the like stagnation, which is also kind of a theme in this movie of like there's like that feeling that particularly Lydia's daughter kind of just feels like stuck, so I think that was kind of cool.
Lydia is grown up in this movie. I like that she's like a TV show, paranormal investigation show called Ghost House, which was originally one of the working titles for Beetlejuice, which is funny. And then you've got Delia's kind of like a famous artist now, even though she was like somewhat famous then-ish. But like she's like making all these galleries and stuff, and the dad,
but
Charles,
still making like weird art.
Oh yeah, 100%. The dad, Charles, was dies in a plane crash and is eaten by a shark, which is really funny, and they do it in an awesome claymation scene, which is super cool. So I mentioned it a little earlier in this episode. Jeffrey Jones, there's some backstory on him, and so I looked up to see if he was in the movie, like in the cast list, and I was like, why the hell is he not in the cast list? Like, is he dead? So I looked him up. He's alive, and I'm like, why the fuck isn't he in there? And I looked at some reviews, and people were like, just Google him. And so I did. Yeah, this is there's some interesting stuff here. He got into some legal troubles, and in 2003, he was convicted for soliciting a minor to pose nude photographs.
So his absence is warranted.
And his death is warranted. So he's a registered sex offender now, and so he's not cast in movies anymore because of that. And like, he got in trouble for having child pornography. Like, it's some fucked up shit. Yeah, so that's why he's not in the movie, and that's why it's like not even voiced by him, and that's why his head was bitten by a shark, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, his death reveal is also hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, Delia's like, your father's left us, and she's like, he's divorcing you. She's like, no, he's dead.
Yeah.
like goes from being like sobbing to like, no, you idiot, he's fucking dead.
Yeah, it's like they handle his absence, and I put that in air quotes because of his controversy. They handle him very well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, and like, because they still keep Delia's love for Charles intact, instead of just being like, oh, he's a piece of shit, and throwing him out, by the wayside, because it keeps that whole theme from the first one intact, and I like that.
Right, and it's a good way to bring the family back together to the original house.
Yep.
Which is, it's kind of the polar opposite of how they did it in Ghostbusters, which was basically out of hate and spite. Like, this is actually like everybody wanted to come together. So it's an interesting comparison.
And you're saying that for the Legacy sequel?
Correct. Yeah.
Comparing the two, yeah. I had no idea Danny DeVito was in this movie. And spoilers for people who who haven't watched it yet. But he's in it for fucking 2 seconds.
Yeah, and he gets wrecked, so it's fine.
Yeah, so he I just remember like watching it, like the French guy who falls down the thing and dies, and then is like, hey, like to the janitor, and I'm like, is that Danny DeVito?
Yeah,
and then he turns around and I was like,
him.
Yeah, exactly. So it was very recognizable. And then he's like drinking fucking Drano, which is very just like Always Sunny vibes. Frank. So good. And he, like you said, he gets wrecked. Monica Bellucci, who plays Dolores in this, like her scene with her like putting herself back together and stapling herself, the stapling is cool, but like the CGI was a little iffy for me.
It was okay. It was also, I think, a little too long of a sequence.
Yes.
It didn't need to be that long.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to talk, I'll talk about her character later, but I have some qualms about her. But she sucks the soul out of Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
And she's a soul sucker from a death cult. And when she sucks his soul out, he like shrinks up and just like
shrivels and like turns into like a like, I don't even know, like
a sock,
it's like just his like
almost,
skin just like flaps on the
gross.
ground.
And like whenever she does that to other people, it's so gross, but it's also so cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool effect.
Yeah. It's awesome. Like, it's like when she does the like laundromat owner, and she like sucks the soul out of him. Yeah, that like, it's just very, very cool effect.
Yeah.
Very cool
R.I.P.
effect.
Bob.
Yeah, R.I.P. and Bob. Bob is awesome in this.
Yeah.
And I love that. Yeah, well, I want to get into that too. But you get into the office again, like that kind of like waiting room. You get a hot dog eating competition guy who died while eating hot dogs, which is hilarious. You get like there's in the background an astronaut that like suffocated. His like helmet is like fucked up, and his face is like blue, and his eyes are all bulging, which I thought was super cool. You get the cat lady where the cat is like gnawing on her leg, and just again, very cool effects, very cool throwback to the first one. Just keeps that world intact, which I like.
I like the guy that was like compressed into the little box that's full of water.
Yes,
and like
yeah, it was
up.
like a magician, right? It's like a magician.
Yeah, escape artist or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool one too.
Yeah, very cool. So they, I had like Brad Pitt's the producer on this film, and he was supposed to be a ghost in that waiting room where he was shot in the head. Did you ever see Burn After Reading?
Yeah.
Do you remember when he gets shot in the face in that movie?
Yeah.
He's basically supposed to be that character.
That would be funny.
Which, spoiler alert for Burn After Reading, people, because that scene is shocking. But he was unable to attend because of scheduling conflicts for that scene. But that would have been hilarious if he was that character.
Would have been funny.
Yeah, you get. I love just the little gags that they do like that. It just again, it's very simple and creative, and that they have it in the first one and the second one is good. It's not like they're not trying to like up the ante so much in this movie.
Right. That's why I think it's successful.
Yeah.
Is like they didn't try to. I think you can tell that it's a higher budget, but they didn't go like crazy, with it. Like they put the money into places where it really like complemented like the set design and the makeup and stuff like that, rather than blowing it all on like crazy CGI bullshit that like no one really cares about anyway, like a main character in these movies is like the afterlife world, and like it was really smart to put the money there rather than in
crazy
other
elaborate
visual
set
effects
pieces
and
yeah, I agree.
And
Yeah,
to
they
bring
do it-
Willem Dafoe into the movie.
Willem Dafoe is fucking awesome in this movie.
Yeah.
Christopher Walken was offered that part, which would
I
have
could
been
also
funny.
see.
But Willem Dafoe is fucking awesome in this.
Yeah.
As like the detective actor.
Yeah.
And he blew himself up with a grenade by accident, which is hilarious. And
Yeah.
like the scenes where he always has a cup of coffee and he's like crushing it and throwing it into a trash can. He's so good in this. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him. I mean, he's great in anything, honestly.
Yeah.
The effect where, and it's in the trailer where, I think it's in the trailer where Beetlejuice sees the picture of Dolores and his eyes bug out of his head and his tongue goes out. Like that effect is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you get Beetlejuice's backstory in this movie. I like
I
it,
do
but I
and I
don't
don't.
like it. Yeah. Because it's like, it's cool that he's just a mystery character and you don't know if he's telling the truth or not. And that kind of adds the ambiguity of him.
That being said, though, I did like his backstory.
Me too.
But yeah, I feel like because he's this like, demon almost, like I feel like he should be like an ambiguous kind of.
Yeah, it's not really necessary.
Yeah, like that's why I think like the Heath Ledger Joker is so good, is because there is no background. Like he just exists,
you don't know what story he tells about the cuts and scars on his face.
Yeah.
See, I like that's one of my qualms with this movie, and it leads me into my other one. It's like we didn't need to know his backstory, and like it ties in Dolores, but she is not needed in this movie at all.
Yeah, I agree.
She is a complete throwaway character. I did not care for her at all. She has fucking like 7 lines of dialogue in this movie. Let me see. I had it written down. Yeah, literally 7 lines of dialogue. And we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but she gets eaten by a sandworm at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And she's like searching for him the whole time.
Unceremoniously.
And, very quickly. and is just like searching and soul sucking all these dudes, which sounds really funny. And just going around soul sucking dudes. She's just not needed in this movie at all.
Yeah,
at all.
Honestly, I think the guy was a much better antagonist. What was his name?
Justin Theroux,
Yes.
who has the ponytail.
No, not him. I mean, he was kind of.
Oh, Jeremy, the kid who
Jeremy.
like he was kind of boring. He was mad to me.
I feel like that could have been developed better rather than
Yes.
spending more time on Dolores. Like, I feel like drop the backstory, drop her.
He should have
focus
been the
on
main villain.
Him trying to swap souls or like swap lives with Jenny Ortega, and then Justin Theroux as the like living
He is
antagonist,
awesome.
you know, which he is a pretty good character, and he is
such a
kind of
piece
the
of
living
shit.
antagonist in this, which is great. The final reveal of him being like, "I just wanted your money" is like really funny because he's like the whole time you just know he's like such a scumbag, you
He's
know,
such a narcissist, like attention seeker. It's like all about him, and it's
the
he's
scene
such
with,
a prick.
in the very beginning when she's gonna take one of her pills and he's like, "My only job is to make sure you never take these pills," and she's like, "I just need one to get through today," and he's like, "This is the last time I'm digging pills out of the trash for you," and then he pops one too, like.
He's hilarious. I think he's a very underrated actor. He's been in some like really good drama, and he was in American Psycho. Which so was Willem Dafoe, so that's a cool little tie. But he is hilarious, and he helped write Tropic Thunder, which is a fantastic comedic movie. Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, he's great. There's like too many. It was like either focus on either Jeremy, the Putz kid in the treehouse that's a ghost, or Dolores. But again, Dolores,
Beetlejuice is also again like a semi-antagonist. So like, I feel like they should have focused on one, and plus Beetlejuice. You know, like like it just got too like none of them were like particularly deep either. So like it was very like it wasn't even like chaotic. It was just like all of a sudden everything ties up and you're like, oh, like okay, like I guess we're done with all those side plots, you know.
Yeah. There's a couple other things I want to talk about that I didn't like, but I mean I get why. So the whole time I was like, are Adam and Barb going to show up, or is Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis going to show up? Tim Burton
Not
didn't
Alec
want
Baldwin
them to
anymore, sadly.
because of the whole Rust gun thing. Yeah, that's all fucked.
I wouldn't have been up. I like Alec Baldwin.
Me too.
Independently of whether or not he killed somebody. I like his career is very laudable, I guess.
Closers, coffees for closers. Leads are weak. Glengarry Glen Ross. I botched that a little bit, but it's okay. People know what I'm talking about.
I'm thinking of The Departed.
Oh, he is the best part of that movie.
So good in The Departed.
Yeah, I love him. Just like, what are you, one of those fitness freaks? Go fuck yourself. Some of his lines like are incredible in that movie. Pretty much every line of his in that movie is incredible.
When he's talking to Matt Damon in his office, he's like, "You, my son, are a cop," and just dunks his head in ice water.
Yeah, he's so good. So back to Adam and Barb. There's kind of a throwaway line where they're like, where Lydia's like, "Oh, they found a loophole and they've moved on," which sure, I get it. Also, I get it because they're older now, and Tim Burton's like, no matter how much digital de-aging we could do, no one cares. Like no one is gonna believe that, or like
you're right, yeah.
Like to see them digitally de-age. It's probably already.
I did think that was handled in a pretty funny way, because Lydia says that they found a loophole, and then her daughter goes, "Oh, convenient." Then it's just like out, you know.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of those like meta jokes that's actually like plays pretty well. So yeah, I thought that was like a clever way to kind of skate around that.
Yeah. Probably also would have been stupid expensive to digitally DH them, and already with a $150 million budget, I get it. I get it. Yeah. So I like Jenna Ortega is like the same character as she is in fucking everything in this. Like, in my opinion,
I don't know if I've seen her in anything else.
Like, did you ever watch Wednesday on Netflix?
I haven't.
Yeah, don't. It's super popular. I thought it was fucking garbage. Yeah. It was annoying, and there's the one main actor that's like the love interest in the show, and he's the most annoying fucking person in the world. Yeah, I have some thoughts about that show. There's some good parts, but like season 2's coming out, I don't give a fuck.
You also didn't like Ghostbusters, so can you be trusted?
I know, and I usually like everything.
The answer,
I like
is
everything.
yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And what's crazy is I usually like everything. It's very hard to like make me not pleased or dislike something. I'm pretty easygoing, happy-go-lucky most of the time. 95% of the time I am. And I don't know, I just wasn't into Ghostbusters. I know that was a huge bombshell, but yeah. So speaking of Wednesday and Jenna Ortega, she worked with Tim Burton on that show because it's based on the Addams Family, and a couple like Jenna Ortega learned about the sequel, and a couple days later, Tim Burton called her into her office and dropped the script down and said, "Hey, I want you to play Astrid," which is super cool. I like that when directors and actors have a good relationship and they continue to do things together. But she is good for this role, and I like her because she's like that kind of emo-ish, depressed girl. Again, she kind of plays that in Wednesday as well. And I like her in this. She's okay. I mean,
like she's like it. To me, it's a good characterization because her and Lydia are almost exactly the same, but there's like that disdain, the same way that there was between Lydia and Delia in the first movie. So like I like that mirror. That's where I think like mirroring things but changing it slightly is where like legacy sequels I think can really be successful. And like, because nobody wants to watch a frame for frame remake, like, so like you got to switch it up a little bit and keep it interesting, but you still want that nostalgia because we're millennials and we're nostalgia whores. So
yeah, very much a whore for nostalgia. Suck souls for nostalgia. Suck some souls. Yeah, we should end on that note. No, I'm just kidding. My computer, my other computer died, so I'm going to use my phone now. So I'm pulling up my notes. Again, I like Justin Theroux in this movie. I knew that he was going to say Beetlejuice 3 times instantly when he's like having that conversation with Lydia, and he's like, "You got to face your trauma, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice," and it's just like, oh fuck. Like, that was cool. I like that. Yeah. And then,
especially because you think it's going to be Astrid that's going to be the defiant one and launch it. But no, it's so fitting that it's him because he's just like such a scumbag. Yeah,
he doesn't care. Like, it's all about him. And I love that it's like couples therapy. And Beetlejuice is like, "Oh, spill your guts," and then his guts literally spill out onto the floor. Yeah. I loved that. Yeah. And it's also fitting because, like, Beetlejuice the whole time knows that Justin Theroux's character is a piece of shit, and he's holding back information, and that's why he sticks him with the truth serum at the end, which is cool. And then you get baby Beetlejuice, which is creepy as fuck.
Yeah,
but also disturbing. Really cool. Yeah, but also really cool and funny. And you get that later in the movie, which is crazy. And then you get is this a figment of your imagination? Yeah, and it does that same shot where it's from behind Beetlejuice and he does the crazy face, and Justin Theroux's character basically like passes out, which I love. The shrunken head guys that like run Beetlejuice's like ad agency or like office that he has is super cool. Bob, like you said, is hilarious, and you feel bad for him because he gets his soul sucked. Maybe it's a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
After all this talk about it, maybe it's a good thing. The shrinker, like, so they call them the shrinkers, all those guys with the shrunken heads. Those were all practical, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Basically it's people in a body, and then the head is all remote control, like animatronic, which is awesome.
Really cool.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shots in the movie is when all like 12 of them like run out of the house. And they're just like running around the yard, chasing the trick or treaters. That was pretty great.
Yeah, I love that. What else I got? Let's see. Again, I'm on my phone, so I apologize.
Do you have any, like, what's your like biggest positive for the sequel?
Biggest positive?
Yeah.
That they use practical effects still.
Okay.
And that Michael Keaton's still hilarious. Like you see it in the trailer, and I said it. Like one of the funniest parts of the movie, I mean, is Delia accidentally killing herself with snakes. Because she's not super intelligent.
Super fitting.
Yeah, and she's like it's very fitting that she's in that waiting room and being like, hey, like I'm not supposed to be here. But it also makes sense. Catherine O'Hara actually recommended and suggested her dying, and it makes sense because Charles is dead and she gets to be reunited with him, which I love that ending for them. It's just a very good like full circle moment for them. But the scene where she says his name, she's like Beetlejuice, and she's like shrieking at saying his name, and then he shows up and he's like, I'm already here, like I'm already here. Yeah. And he like checks her out and gives her an up and down, like a once over. And like the way he does it is so funny. And then her reaction is even funnier, where she's just like, ew. It's so good. That was my absolute favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
That part was hilarious. Catherine O'Hara is so good in this too. Like,
yeah, she's great. She's great in everything.
Yeah. I mean, she like snapped back into this character just like so well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But every time I see her though, I think of Moira Rose from Schitt's Creek. Did you ever watch that show?
I watched like bits of it.
Oh, it's so good.
Jenna won't watch it with me, so
why?
She doesn't think it's funny.
Really?
Yeah. So
I wonder if she thinks Wednesday's funny. You should ask her that.
No, we haven't watched that, so maybe we'll try it.
Don't try it. Don't try it.
Yeah. So my one controversial take, or at least you might think this is controversial.
Yeah.
Is that I actually think I liked Michael Keaton's performance in the sequel better than the original.
Really?
And my one big gripe with him in the original is that he talks too fast.
Interesting.
And in the sequel, he still, maintains that like nasty, like gurgly, like raspy voice.
Yeah.
But he speaks much more clearly and like better paced, in my opinion. And it's just like easier to follow what he's saying.
Interesting. And that's why you liked his performance, is because he was more audible?
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I like him better in the first one. Just because I think his dialogue is more like off the cuff.
Well, I think that's probably why, is like because he's ad-libbing probably more in the first one. he probably just sat there and like did a bunch of lines over and
Yeah.
over again to get the takes, you know, or whatever.
What kind of lines? Cocaine?
Yeah,
It's the 80s.
probably.
You
It's
never- yeah,
88,
probably.
You know? But yeah, I mean, I don't like in a way like the sequel felt like his lines were a little bit more scripted, which I personally liked. I have like bad hearing though, so like sometimes when people are just like talking super fast and in like a weird way, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that guy just said. So
That's why you gotta. I mean, do you ever watch like British TV shows or British movies, and you're just like,
some of them I cannot watch because I don't know what they're saying.
subtitles do help in that
I
scenario.
hate reading though.
I know.
If I'm watching
You
a
can't
show,
hear.
I don't want to
You
read.
can't read. What are you good for, Jake?
Watching well scripted American TV shows and
Yeah.
movies. That's all I'm
The
good for.
cow jumped over the moon. It's like basic shit like that. Oh man, I don't think that's such a controversial take though, because I think his performance is good.
Yeah.
I sometimes and I mentioned this in some other reviews. I don't know exactly which ones, but sometimes it's hard for me to sit down and watch a movie straight through because I've just got a bunch of shit going on. And again, this is not our day job. This movie I watched in like 3 different parts. I wish I would have watched it in one sitting. I do want to watch it again. Unlike like the Ghostbusters, I mean, I did say I will watch it again, but it's like this movie I could see myself watching again, and I want to watch the original again. I don't know when I'll rewatch it, but I like sitting through it in one sitting. I think I'd appreciate it even more.
Yeah.
Like I gave it a decent review on Letterboxd. I gave it a 3.5, which is a decent review for me. Like that's solid if you ask me. Like
Yeah.
I think it's like 7 out of 10. That's kind of high. If you double up your fraction there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean I will say that the ending is a little rushed a little bit. I mean it's an hour and 45 minutes. It's not a super long movie, but it's longer than the original. They try and like I knew they were going to have some sort of like dance singing sequence, and they do with the like MacArthur Park song, which I thought it was cool. I didn't think it was great. What'd you think?
I thought it was goofy and fun. Like,
Yeah.
it's very on brand for
Yes,
Beetlejuice.
I agree.
So,
I thought the song would have been a little catchier and maybe funnier. I don't know. That was just my opinion of it. But I do like the dancing is fun. I really like the influencer scene where they're all on their phones and they all get sucked into their phones. I thought that was fucking awesome and
Yeah.
really well done, and also just a knock to everyone addicted to their phones, which I will admit I'm somewhat, if not I am addicted to my phone. I've worked on that a bit in my life lately, which is good.
and also
As I'm here on my phone reading my notes, but it's my notes. It's appropriate.
it's
were you gonna
also
say?
a very on brand way for them to have cleared out that church for this movie.
Yes.
You know, like, and that's
Yeah.
what's like another good hallmark of like great scripting is when those little kind of details help world build or reinforce, you know, the universe of that movie, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the wedding dress is basically the same as the one from the original, which is
And
cool,
his
worn by
tuxedo.
Lydia, and
His,
his
like, red
tuxedo, and it
velvet
fit. Yep, which is really cool. I like that about the ending scene. The ending nightmare is pretty crazy with the baby. I thought that was insane, and they're just like the producers and writers were like, this movie isn't really a happy movie. It's like we can't end on a happy note, like everything tied up. We have to like show this goofiness of it, and I thought that was pretty pretty smart. Yeah, it's I liked it. I think it's a good sequel. I think there's some parts that could have been better, like I said, with the villain. The one thing I wanted to talk about is the dad with Astrid's dad and Lydia's husband. He dies in the Amazon. And it's like there's a payoff, but the payoff isn't paid off in full, if you ask me. Because Astrid's like depressed the whole movie that her dad's dead, and then she finally gets to see him, and there's no there's a hug and everything, but there should have been like a reconciliation or like more. I wanted a little more. Also, like Lydia could give two fucks that her husband's there. It seemed like.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think that's the entire ending just feels rushed and very like compressed. Like Jeremy, right, is the treehouse guy. Like he gets dropped into a pit to hell. Like, and his thing is tied up and done. It's like, oh, okay. Like I thought he was going to be like a primary villain, but apparently it's super easy to deal with. Then,
agreed.
Like we said, Dolores gets eaten by a sandworm within like 3 minutes of walking into the church.
Not even, yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, that's
her character was pointless.
Yeah, that's tied up real easily.
Yeah.
But then you get the long wedding sequence with Lydia and Beetlejuice, which is really the more fitting arc anyway. So like, yeah, it's just like we talked about earlier, like there's just a little too much going on, even though it was all very simple, which is like a weird kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
Especially when they all kind of wrap up within like 10 minutes of each other.
I know. I know. Yeah, that like I literally debated giving it a 3 or 3.5 on Letterboxd, and I was like, you know what, it's solid for what it is, and again with knowing the shit that came out in 24 of movies that were just trash, it's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Like it's solid. It's not bad. It's not amazing.
Yeah, and like
it's solid.
The caveat I'll give those plot issues is that they don't necessarily detract from the experience of watching the movie, as much as like they could have, you know. So like it's not like, if you're not like us and you're not trying to like analyze the movie while you're watching it, you probably wouldn't give a shit, you know. So it's fine.
Yeah,
you know.
That's what's interesting again about this podcast is like we're watching this movie for the first time, but we're also analyzing it. So, yeah, pretty interesting. It's like maybe you got to watch it twice. That's a lot of movie.
Yeah.
So, but I like this month a lot. This Legacy month. This is a fucking awesome month. It's been fun. I especially loved our last episode. And I like when we have differing opinions. It adds a lot of discourse.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed this episode, and I'm excited for Tron and Tron Legacy next.
Me too.
And yeah, I mean, this is a really cool month. There's so many other movies we could have done, but we already did Top Gun, and I wanted to do Top Gun Maverick. But I'm stoked for Tron Legacy and Tron.
Yeah, me too. Have you seen the original Tron?
Yeah,
okay. I've never seen
the
the original.
Okay,
and I've only seen Tron Legacy when it came out, so it's been God knows how long. So I'm excited.
Right on. I think the Tron Legacy pack, like Blu-ray pack I have, has the first Tron in it. I have to check.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm stoked for that, and I can't wait to watch both of them.
And there's a new one coming out this year, I think.
Tron Ares.
Yeah, so that'll be cool.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about that next week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Check out the movies Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, and Beetlejuice. And I said the sequel first and then the original. So I also just wanted to say Beetlejuice 3 times.
No, yeah.
But yeah, check out those movies if you haven't already, and check out this episode and our other ones for Legacy Month. And we'll catch you next week.
Yep, see you.